Okay, great. Ms. Lopez, are there any public comments for tonight's meeting? No. Okay, then we will go on to the approval of the minutes. So first I'll ask if there is a motion to approve.
Motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any discussion? I actually have some discussion on it. I think it's a little bit of a departure in the details compared to our previous meetings. So I prefer if we had some of the content of the discussion in the part where we talk about the preliminary budget, just so we, I think get some of the healthy discourse that was in there, and rather than just kind of like a summary of the presentation. So I'm not sure what we do if.
I will talk to Lisa, so I can make sure to get that fixed, so I can make sure summarize it.
Is it possible to defer a vote until next time? Like, how does that? So, yeah. Okay.
I just had some thoughts, because I felt like, at least especially in my time as the chair, I don't look at minutes as I used to, that they were very long and nearly verbatim in the past, and 10 or 12 pages long, and so trying to find a happy medium is challenging.
Yeah.
But I agree with you guys.
This is a very short agenda. I wanted to do it last week.
Okay, great. Then I guess I'll motion to postpone the approval of the minutes.
Motion.
Okay, second? Well, I don't think I can move it.
Okay.
She made it, I moved it, you're second.
Yes, I'll say.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye. All opposed? Okay, so that passes. Okay, election of committee officers. Dun, 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 dun. Nominations are now in order. The office of committee chair for a 1-year term. I call for any nominations for committee chair.
I will nominate Michelle Megan.
Did we kind of like it, right?
He's gone. That's what we missed last time.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. He
You did not renew.
Oh,
had some family commitments, so.
okay.
Okay.
You done it? Okay. A second. We're good.
Okay, then any discussion?
What are your qualifications?
Well, 1 whole year on the CIC.
That's enough.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Okay, motion passes. That means we now need to vote on the co-chair. So any nominations for co-chair?
Before that happens, I would love to nominate Mr. Ross Bass to be the co-chair.
Okay,
And I can confirm he has emailed and said that if he was nominated, he would accept either. So,
Do you have an interest in not being coaching?
Yeah, somewhat.
What?
I feel like I'm winding down on my CFC service.
Cal, do you have any?
Sure, I'll be good there.
Okay,
I'll nominate nominate me.
Well, I would, it's someone else, but
Oh.
Okay.
I think we failed to get a second.
Yeah, I feel, yeah,
wait, oh, you nominated Bob.
I did.
Oh, okay. I said that.
Does get a little awkward.
I think the rule is, you need to vote on each as an independent thing.
Okay, so before we move on to Cal, we'd have to vote on Bob.
Okay.
We'll look at some.
but I moved and nobody seconded, so that. If
Oh,
it
that's
fails for a second and then.
I didn't know if that was a failure to second or just a discussion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
um. Either one is fine with me, so.
Like what?
Okay, so then. I mean, I don't know, Bob's not here, so.
Hopefully he's watching this, this at home.
Bob.
All right, I will nominate Cal Davis as co-chair.
Okay, I will second. Is there any discussion?
None here.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Opposed, please say nay. Okay, motion passes. Bob will be around, so he can be the co-chair next.
Okay. What is the process for filling our vacant?
Sure, so now I can, we have posted, we've got a plethora of applicants that I'm starting to sort through. We're in a different position than last year, as last year we still had a chair of the CFC to assist in the interview process. We technically did not have a chair, and so now that we have a chair, we will start scheduling interviews. We will work to have panel interview process. The board will approve the nomination, and then that person will be able to serve at our next meeting.
Okay. Discussion items. So the first up is the FY 27 budget update.
All right, so I will, 1 second here, I'm just gonna pull up the presentation on the screen. Okay, so last Thursday, the tentative budget was presented to the board. So I wanted to take a few minutes just to brief the committee on where our numbers stand. We've got about a month to go before the final version gets adopted. And then also the update to the 5-year financial projection has been completed now. So we'll take a look at that tonight as well. In terms of budget changes, there are really only 4 items of note. The first item is an annual adjustment to property tax revenues. Once we get to the end of the fiscal year, we assess how much of the prior year's levy is still outstanding, and then include that uncollected portion in the current year's budget. So this year, that adjustment resulted in an increase to the revenue budget of about $733,000. On the expense side, the budget was updated to include the new faculty senate contract that just got ratified back in June. Even though there were a number of contract changes, the impact on the budget was actually pretty minimal. We had an increase of $144,000 compared to the estimates that were being used in the preliminary budget draft. Then on the other hand, if we move over to non-operating expenditures, our construction expenses did experience a sizable increase from a budget perspective, but this was largely due to timing. Billings for both Project 2 and the geothermal project came in under budget in fiscal year 26. So with those projects spanning multiple years and expected to conclude in the coming year, those costs were merely shifted from fiscal year 26 into the fiscal year 27 budget. One change we had that was not due to timing was a $900,000 increase to the Act 3 project budget. And while that project as a whole is still under consideration, one of the options on the table is to potentially go to referendum in the spring of 2027. Now, if that occurs and the referendum is successful, the architects would begin preparing construction documents in April. So we wanted to make sure the budget could accommodate that expense if needed. Again, those budget dollars would not be touched unless the referendum was approved and we actually proceeded with that route. But without those, we would be in a position where we had no money available to kind of continue the progress on the project. That money would need to come from the operating funds. So the budget for interfund transfers was also increased by $900,000 for the same reason. Here's a quick look at the summary of the budget's impact on fund balance. If you were to compare this slide to the one presented in June, the total on the left column for fiscal year 26 operating fund balance, that wound up about $1 million lower than our previous estimate. And that difference stems from not receiving all the property taxes we were expecting and a little bit larger backlog of bills that were paid at the very end of the fiscal year. Moving over to the right side of the slide, then highlighted in green, our projected ending fund balance for fiscal year 27 is now at $33.5 million, or 34% of annual expenditures. So that's about a 1 to 1.5% lower percentage than where we were sitting with the preliminary draft of the budget. Then just as a reminder, we have several items that will warrant further monitoring over the course of the year. This list itself has not changed, but I did include some updated figures here showing the potential impact of the geothermal tax incentive being, if it were to be delayed beyond fiscal year 27. You can see that if we remove that revenue, the fund balance percentage would potentially fall to just under 25%. And I do use the word potentially there on purpose because these figures assume that the district spends its entire budget during the year. Historically, that hasn't happened, so it's reasonable to expect fund balance would still finish higher than what's actually shown here. The bigger thing is, even if we did have some additional cushion, we'd still be a little more susceptible, obviously, to property tax delays in the fall of 2027. So that's why this item remains at the top of the list of things that we'll continue to have our eye on over the coming year. All right, so now shifting over to the 5-year financial projection. Similar to last year, I've included 2 scenarios here for the committee. In this first scenario, we get a glimpse of what happens when revenues and expenses from the fiscal year 27 budget are carried forward using our standard set of assumptions. So for revenues, the important thing is this means the next 2 tax levies continue with that 3-year approach of recapturing unclaimed property tax dollars from 2023 and 2024. That is now tied into our assumptions. For expenses, we're assuming 3 things. The first being staffing remains the same. The second is that services and materials continue to grow at the rate of inflation. And then third, the district continues paying for building maintenance work from its fund balance reserves. The cumulative effect of those sets of assumptions can be seen at the bottom of the slide, as fund balance would decline by about 3 to 4 percentage points on an annual basis. Now, the second scenario shows what adjustments would be needed if we chose to target a 33% fund balance at the conclusion of each year. And just to revisit this concept, I know we've talked about it a couple times before, I believe, but 33% was chosen to provide more of a safety net in the event Cook County keeps delaying property taxes. That 33% figure gives us enough money in the bank at the start of the year to cover 4 months worth of expenses. So in other words, we could likely navigate a 2 or maybe 2.5 month delay in taxes before we'd have to resort to borrowing money for operations purposes. Given that we've seen delays in 5 of the last 6 years now, I highly recommend this approach from a financial planning perspective. So in this projection scenario, to maintain that 33% fund balance, I've inserted a row highlighted in orange that tells us the amount of budget adjustments that would be needed each year. The next 2 years of the projection show adjustments of $2 to $2.5 million, but then that amount climbs to $5 million in the following 2 years. On the far right of the slide, there are a couple arrows pointing out 2 possibilities for what these adjustments might look like. The option in the blue arrow is to reduce the amount of operating expenditures. That approach, along with removing some conservatism from the budget, might be sufficient for the next 2 years' budget, where we have that roughly $2 million shortage to get to the 33%. Where the long-term view changes is we would likely need some additional measures taken if we hoped to avoid making significant budget cuts. So that kind of brings us to the second possibility, and that option considers issuing debt to finance 10-year maintenance plan expenses rather than continuing to pay for that work from our operating funds. So if you look to the left of the red arrow, the projection calls for roughly $4 million worth of transfers from operating funds per year in order to meet those capital needs. Now, if we could remove those transfers, the fund balance would remain stable with much less disruption to our operational spending. So while these decisions don't necessarily have to be made today, I envision that conversations of this nature will be happening at the CFC table in the near future. So I wanted to present these possibilities for you. We knew going into this year's budget planning that there would need to be ongoing efforts to control spending. And I do think we're off to a good start. The fiscal year 27 budget is expected to hold the fund balance flat compared to the previous year. But the projections still show that we've got more work to do. So those are some of the things we'll be thinking about as we continue through this year and start turning our focus to fiscal year 28 budgeting and beyond. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions or further discussion.
Thanks, Brian. So this red arrow sort of row, that's assuming that we do not do project or Act 3, or it assumes we will do.
No, it's to give you an example, one thing that can be done would be if districts want to attack their capital maintenance projects, they can do there's different types of bonds, whether if it's for life safety bonds or working cash bonds, to finance the payments of the capital work instead of transferring from operating funds. So this would be targeting our annual routine capital projects on a building, not the large capital projects.
Okay, so are you saying it assumes that it's not even taking that into account at all? Correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so then let's say, and I'm not saying like an opinion here, but let's say I was pro Act 3. And then I think it would be confusing because you're asking then the taxpayers for, an increase for that, but then you're also looking to take on debt for this. Is that? Yeah.
No, I understand what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any type of a ballpark figure on how much could be life safety or not really?
We will, we don't yet, with our change in, directors of buildings and grounds, we are, in the process of scheduling our, updated life safety study. So we'll know that relatively soon, but, not, immediately offhand.
Can I just ask a clarifying question about the assumptions? Which I know are in the other packets. Are you gonna talk about the other packet, Brian, or should we? Put the two
No.
packets together?
Yeah, you can go ahead with any questions you have.
Okay, so first question is page 1 of the assumptions packet is the second scenario that you showed us with the 33% fund balance, correct?
Page 1 of the assumptions packet.
Yeah, there's like, we have a second document here, which is
The-
called,
the-
sorry,
yeah,
projected,
projected, that's
the
what I'm-
5-year projections.
Yes.
Alright, and then. So I just wanna understand, if you go down then to page 3 of that document. I think, yeah, okay, then let's look at the levy assumption, so the actual CPI under PTEL. Which is the levy amount, right?
Okay, so now you're looking at the summary of key assumptions for financial projections, that document?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
That percentage is just the estimate for what CPI will come in at.
Okay. Got it. So then so this is not, it's not the levy amount, so this isn't the expected increase in the revenue. So I guess what I'm trying to clarify
Right.
is what's for the 26-27 year, remind me, what was the levy percentage with the recapture rolled in?
4.4%.
4.4. Okay, and then 27 and 28, the projected revenue also includes those. Whatever CPI is plus the, whatever projected CPI is plus the recapture amount.
Exactly. Yeah. So we had in last year's levy, we had roughly a little over $2 million that could be recaptured. And we
Okay.
had decided we were going to take 1/3 of it. So the assumption is factoring in another third taken in the upcoming levy year, and then the final third the year after.
Okay. And then otherwise, the 2% assumption that we're using at this point.
Right. Right.
I got it. Okay, thank you.
For perspective, like how are partner districts paying for like routine capital projects?
It varies. I can tell you, I know a lot of districts do some form of a bond issuance. Others do it through fund transfer. It really can vary district by district. Just to clarify too, I should say the third option that we're not recommending here is there's also districts that don't do either, and then they defer the maintenance, which tends to backfire down the road.
Yeah, I have a clarifying question about the red arrow as well. So Tony, my memory serves, and I haven't looked at that tenure in a little while, and it's I need to look at that. Is some of the capital improvements that are scheduled for, what are those years, 29, 30, 30, 31, is some of that within areas of the building that would be affected by Act 3? In other words, would that have to be completely recalculated if in fact we go ahead with that. So it's not.
When we did the most recent update, we took out the known areas at that time. It is entirely plausible that given how Act 3 has evolved since that update, that there's going to be more areas or even sequencing that no longer makes sense. So those numbers holistically could change based on our next 10-year capital update. Some of it has been pulled out already though.
In theory, shouldn't our CIP projects decrease as we rebuild a large chunk of the school? I mean, if just look at how much we're gonna spend over the next 5 to 10 years, how much were we spending before? It probably should be more. And then now we're kind of streamlining and getting less because we don't have to do anything to the gymnasium because we're building a new one, or theater because we're gonna build a new one. You know, things like that. Should it kind of level out lower for the most part?
In some ways, yes, but then we also have, annually construction's about 4%, it escalates, so,
Annual construction?
yes, yeah. So some of that we do take into account in there that, once the Project 2 space opens, that there's not gonna be a lot of, CIP work that has to be done. Eventually the tuck pointing on the outside of the building will catch up as that comes back around. But a lot of the work that's planned over the next 6 to 8 years especially heavily involve the corridors. Like when you walk through here, if you've noticed, depending on how you walk downstairs when you exit, it's not uncommon to see hallways that one corridor has been renovated and you see more modern lighting and flooring, and then if you just did a 360 and turned around, then you see the old flooring and the old lighting. So that's a large portion of it. And then it's also, there's unfortunately a backlog too of some projects that were deferred for so long. This year we tackled the windows. They were needing to be done, probably should have lived on this project years ago and just hadn't made their way on. Kind of a yes and no type answer. Like, yes, we have less of the building that we're working on, but because we only routinely manage, a pretty small portion of the building, that we kind of break even on the numbers year over year, at least in the next 10 years.
Okay, and then after 10 years, we should be, this is gonna be a new place in 10 years. And what I wouldn't like to happen is after we're all hanging out at home or whatever on Madison Street, we don't wanna sit around and read our textbook, keep scrolling up because we straddle the next 2 boards with all types of debt. They're not able to do anything and sort of referending, still paying interest and things like that. So I'm just shooting darts here, but I think we should be focused on, as we're making this building nice and new, we should be kind of like making sure that things kind of overlap. Don't do this side of the hall, do the other side of the hall. And, you can't just do this half of the building. You should be trying to straddle in as much as you can, when you can.
Yeah.
Because the money's here and it's not always gonna be here.
That's been a big part of there's really like 4 lenses when we do our 10-year capital improvement plan we look through. And one of those 4 lenses is opportunity. If we're planning to be, let's say we have ceiling tile that's falling apart. Well, we're taking apart that ceiling, how much more does it cost them to do the lighting or any mechanical work because it's already open? So we do stretch it as far as possible on a given year, as long as it still fits within that budget. I can say, like, if you remember, this idea of the reduction targets came about last year, and what we did pull back some CIP work that was mostly due to it wouldn't make sense to say fix a roof if we were then going to knock that roof down a year later for Act Three.
Yes.
Those are, kind of 1 year savings where, we test a lot of our departments this year with, where are there savings to be had that can be perpetual? Do we have, a really easy example is, why are we paying for Zoom and Microsoft Teams and Google Meets? We really don't need Zoom, we have a redundant expense there. We cut that out. We were able to find some pretty low hanging fruit this year to meet our reduction target for this budget. Then it's, making sure that as we look at these capital projects, we balance that opportunity with what we can afford so we don't take on too much as well.
Okay.
I think we talked about maybe a year ago, having more of a long-term, plan for capital, expenses, including, maintenance. So I guess I'd like to revisit that maybe next meeting, so that, I know this is a 5-year, but seems like because of previous deferred maintenance, we're sort of, and some of this is because of that, right? And so we'd like to set it up and, some of what Cal said, in like a healthy way, so we're not doing that to the next people that come after us.
Yeah, I agree. I would suggest maybe 2 meetings out. We have a new director of the building and ground right now. And I just, I can tell you with his focus being on both the CIP work happening now and then Project 2, he wouldn't be able to come in and speak to it at the level he would, in a couple months. And while I'm certainly happy to drive the conversation, because he's a big part of that, I'd like to invite him to that meeting as well.
Yeah, 2 meetings sounds good. Other questions on this part? Okay. You wanna keep going, Brian?
That's it for me.
Okay. So then the next, step is you're gonna have the public comment, and then in September it gets finalized, is that correct?
Yeah, so next week's board meeting, they're going to be asked to approve a resolution giving us authorization to put this tentative budget on display for public inspection. That'll be available for at least 30 days before we make it to the September regular board meeting. And then at that meeting, which is September 24th, the meeting will kick off with a public hearing where the public can come in and make comments on the budget, and then later that night, the board's asked to adopt it.
Okay. I think the only other thing I would say is, for the future, I think starting off, our budget conversations, I think they start in February, that we have more of a connection, right, with the outcomes piece. So I know we talked about that kind of a year ago, but I'd love to see it implemented more when we do it the next round. Okay, next item for discussion is the EVF update.
So what you'll see attached, and this is more, I think, some table setting for future discussion. We really dove into the EVF model in a depth that we hadn't before over the past year. And in hindsight, as we were talking, one thing we realized is that as we the finance department met with the EVF subcommittee, there was a perspective that was missing in terms of how some of the roles that were assigned actually operate within the building. So since then, our EVF subcommittee met with both our members of our finance team and then Dr. Jen Hester, who leads our academic side, to really ask some clarifying questions. And what is attached here is just a quick update on the staffing numbers in terms of what some of those roles would look like had we kind of kicked off with that approach. These are last year's numbers, so the only thing I can say is that while they're updated, they would be kind of outdated to current student counts. We don't have the adequacy gap calculator yet, but I think what this does provide is really a solid framework for us to move forward into this year with, as we really look to continue the strong collaboration between the EBF subcommittee and CFC and the Board of Ed. And then, as we kind of thread that needle into our operations and staffing plans for the year in the building, some of the changes you can see, we've got core teachers who then have a part of 0.2 of their 1.0 serves in a program that is aimed specifically working with students that need to catch up in certain areas and serve in that small group capacity. So we removed those 0.2s from the actual staffing of core teachers and then moved them into the core intervention role, and then also included the low income interventionists in that role. And you can see that it shifts some of those numbers around a little bit. It's not done in a manner necessarily like say to debate last year's numbers, but just set the stage for how we continue to evolve as a district with the tool going forward.
So would you say that what do you think the process for on the district side is going to look like?
I think that what we've learned is it needs to be this is a very interesting tool. I'll start with that in the sense that it's really one that is 50% from a financial look and then 50% from a staffing and education look. And I think that from a process standpoint, I know it's been a little bit hectic as we get to the near start of the school year, but I know Lisa's going to be working with us to set up future meetings with our subcommittee going forward, where we have these conversations that we get, instead of looking back and saying, oh, we could have done this with the tool, where we're very comfortable with where the subcommittee and the CFC and then the district staff and the board, where we're kind of all in agreement on where these positions fall within the tool. I think by doing that and then bringing out the tool earlier, kind of pre-staffing, we'll be able to then have conversations that can be brought to the Board of Education a little bit earlier. And I also can tell you that there was those of you that know about specs know those who do spreadsheet. He has made some incredible progress trying to compare some of the EBF data to the state budget form, to a point that with him not being at this meeting, I couldn't explain those spreadsheets that he had made, but we'll get those in front of the CFC as well this year, to really, I think understand the tool and then be able to utilize it to continue to drive our student success in the district.
Okay, yeah. Bob and I being subcommittee, I think we're gonna get an August meeting, next, and I think it is gonna take a lot of process, essentially, and Bob has literally like many iterations of ways that we can go forward, but I think this, along with what Brian presented, there is going to be a convergence, right? There's going to be a place where it's like, okay, well, if in the future we did need to decrease expenses, and I think some sort of alignment with this makes sense. Obviously the CFC is we need to be, like, at the top, it's, are you within the fund balance, right? And then also, does this align with our values? So, I think when we get to our last discussion item, which is calendar, we can talk about mapping out some of those dates. Because I think that will also allow us to have, more time, for discussion too, along the way.
Agreed, and I think too, as we map it out on the calendar, it's also going to allow us to be more proactive in being able to not just have the conversations, but then pull the data behind the conversations, to really, continue to drive that conversation forward.
When, just because I don't know all the, how everything fits, but so at the board level, when are sort of like the goals set for, oh, we'd like to, get the achievement gap this much, go to work?
Do you wanna tackle that?
Sure. Yeah, we've had conversations now, most recently, our most recent board meeting about that, and so we are in the midst of that at this moment. Probably will take into the beginning of the school year, once things settle for us to get that nailed down, but, where are we right now? Into September, realistic. Something along those lines.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah,
a
you
conversation at
remember-
the board table, where we're gonna talk about kind of student learning topics going into next school year.
Right.
And so I think that is kind of the first conversation that we'll have on this topic, and this would follow that.
Yeah, but I think, so my understanding of where we are is kind of trying to identify, and Dr. Hester's been working on this and putting a more consistent set
That's
of
right.
metrics together that we'll track over time. And then overlaying with that, some benchmark information with peer districts and state averages, and then overlaying with that, some district-specific targets. So,
That's
right,
exactly right.
where are we compared to peers in the state? And then where are we compared to our target for ourselves regarding, which may or may not be related to the state values or the peer values. So I think we'll taking the set of metrics that Dr. Hester has identified, sort of agreeing, okay, these are the ones. And then overlaying those benchmarks and targets, I think then, that those would inform the goals, those would be the goals basically, or the goal might be, okay, if we're at 5%, but we don't wanna be at 10%, the goal for the next year might be 2.5%. So we would have to identify the target and then figure out what's a reasonable goal for a year, since they're usually years.
Yeah, the only thing I wanna carve out as far as scope is concerned is that, it's appropriate to talk about that there, so of course, a lot of course things is in there. But at least as far as how things function with the school, Ms. Parker, right, has a portion of this, and we take a look at, chronic absenteeism, or now what's called consistent attendance, but it's essentially the same thing.
Oh, I hadn't heard that new phrase, okay.
Well, it's essentially the exact same thing.
Yeah,
Just flipped it, so you're looking at the higher, so instead of like 15%, it's now 85%, it's the same. But then anyway, the state report card has changed, and Linda owns a part of that organization. We also have part of Dr. Williams' work, especially related to gaps in comparative districts that fall within that world, and Andrew Newman, special education has metrics that you can track as well. So it's really kind of the scope of the team that is responsible for this one.
Thank you.
And I think too, to make this all the more fun as we prepare to dig in this for the year, other districts will be required now to actually complete this rule in a manner that they haven't been in the past, which actually I'm looking forward to that. I think the first year is going to be a struggle, because I think there's going to be districts that, have different methodologies, but at least there'll be some baseline of comparison district to district with the school itself.
and then how are we involving students? Because I would really I think like they are really at the crux of like knowing what is going on. So what's the thought there?
In this,
In like the process, so you have the board, you know, setting goals, but in terms of layering sort of solutions, right? For there's things going on that like nobody at this table but Tyson knows. Like in reality, in your classes, we're not in your
Yeah.
classes.
I would say, during the school year, so we meet about monthly with Dr. Johnson. And I think we really like kind of just like bring what's happening at the board table to kind of like our meetings, and then like for some things that are like, don't want to say like an open issue, but like we'll give like either suggestions or feedback, or he'll ask us like our opinion about like what do you think would work best for you and your peers. So I feel like we kind of all like really like, he brings us in and then we all can collaborate with each other, and then we talk amongst each other and like kind of figure out something that'd be like the best thing that's like realistic for like Dr. Johnson and his team, but also like best for students, if that makes no sense.
Yeah, it does, and I think maybe we can brainstorm for this committee what would be the most effective way to use your expertise. There discussion on EBF? Okay, we can move on to the calendar review.
Oh, me, okay, sorry, I wasn't sure who was
Do you
leading.
have any documents on that?
Yep, as we look at our calendar for the year, with the CFC, we've laid out our tentative dates, but wanted to, we said we would revisit those at this meeting, in order to really provide kind of that assurance that, you know, we're not missing key events or milestones as we move forward. So wanted to open that up for discussion and you know, see if we are comfortable with their dates. We feel like there's ones that need to move or you know, be more. So yeah.
Okay, I think we have to, maybe we might need to table that then because we need actual dates, we need the actual tasks. I mean, Graham sent me something offline that the board is putting together for at least just for the budget. But I guess, you know, we need an overlay of the tasks, the responsibilities of this committee, you know, with your budgeting process and
Yeah.
other things.
Yeah, that'll work. We are set to here.
Are you looking for the next meeting date?
Yes.
October 13th.
Yep. So, you know, is there looking ahead at you know, feel like that gap in September can make sense. You know, that'll provide September for board approval of our next CFC member as well. And we can definitely have everything prepared and laid out, and that should give Graham time to finalize the tool he's put together as part of the atlas with the key dates as well.
Okay, so for the EBF, it would be mapping out the dates of the major data availability. So I know previously, you had come out, I think in January with, numbers, but I mean, essentially you have the October one. I think we could do it earlier, right? Cause you have to submit to the state, like how many students you have, and then you have whatever staff you have.
Yeah, yeah, Brian, would you see any concern with us moving up the that gap analysis calculator to the October meeting?
I suppose it would be dependent on two things. One is I'm not 100% sure as to when the state releases the new spreadsheet tool for the year. For some reason, I was thinking it was around that October timeframe, but I would need to check that out again. And then secondly, as we kind of saw with this update, is we really need a lot more input from multiple divisions, multiple levels of the administration, I would say, in terms of like where people are being categorized, and kind of how staffing fits within some of those categories. So we continue on that consistency from year to year when we're looking at this spreadsheet. So I envision there being a little bit more time needed to have some of those conversations as opposed to the business office just kind of compiling numbers like we've done in the past.
When did the staffing recommendations come forward?
Those are February, correct?
That's right. They would have worked for them. We begin that and right when they come back from a break, because that's really the table. The student course education process, the consumer, which is really the first step.
Well, it did seem like January was too late for the process this year, so if not October, then what's the meeting after that?
The meeting after that is November 10th.
Okay, so let's just say one of those two.
And I do think that at the very least, we'll probably have had several subcommittee and administration meetings at that point where we could bring, at least some kind of trending data. I'm trying to think of a better way to say it, but okay, we're based on this, we anticipate we'll fall around here, realizing that, this state may modify some of the numbers and how they calculate recommendations, but it should get us at least close to the right direction for then if, let's say the tool is not released till the end of October, it might change slightly, but it shouldn't change, drastically.
Okay. So yeah, so then we can work backwards, like essentially how much time is needed then for the board to take in whatever the subcommittee report is and then all that, in order to get to affect the February staffing report. And then for budget approval process, mapping out the major dates for the budget steps. And just aligning those with CFC.
Yeah, this conversation then, Dr. Bell will bring that back to the board in her update to the Board of Education. And then, we'll have, there's now the time between the tentative budget presentation to where if the CFC came back and said, for this, it's always interesting in a budget because I feel like we spend the majority of our time on the 5-year projections, but, I feel like we're in a strong position to move the annual budget forward. And then, there's an opportunity then to drive the conversation on the 5-year projections forward, again, at the tax levy discussions in December as well.
Okay, and that was my next thing. This is all actually, Bob, when you listen to this, we're bringing up your points. The levy approval process would also need to be mapped over.
I think that could be an October or November CFC conversation. Based on the current dates, we said.
Okay,
The one area that we talked about earlier is the possibility for a referendum in spring too, so depending on the timing of those conversations at the board level, certainly need to include that in our upcoming meetings.
yeah, that's the capital revenue options review. Bob agrees. And then investments. So, projected tax collections, lower fund balances. You know, just whenever we're supposed to be reviewing those things and, you know, different people come in.
Yeah.
Besides that. Yeah, I mean, I guess just highlighting actual decision points, so I know that we're, you know, just giving advice, if there's something, but I think, you know, to use people's time, you know, just to value their time, identify on the calendar when we're gonna be deciding our advice, you know, would be helpful.
Yeah, so if we align, and I think this is what Graham's working on, aligning kind of the major decision points at the board level, right? Like when do we vote on the levy, when do we approve the budget, when do we approve the staffing recommendations? And then mapping CFC agendas so that we can receive CFC input to those decisions. I think that's the goal, yeah.
And like the, you know, the recapture, conversation we had last year, I think that worked really well. So, you know, keeping the timing that worked.
Yep.
For sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think the timing on the levy discussions has been, yeah, nicely aligned with the CFC meeting
The
schedule.
past few years it has been.
Yeah,
So is the task, Tony, is to prepare for the next meeting, to go and come back with a really fully fleshed out tentative and conversation in the county.
And the format that, Graham has drafted is great, so like following sort of the board's doing, it sounds. Okay, any other discussion on the calendar?
Yes. September 30th. is score of a 1% bill buyers. So we need to keep cognizant of what we do with that 5 million. We need to keep cognizant of what we do with that 5 million, because that 1% of it pretty sheet put in our packet is like an eyesore. Everything else is 3 and 4%. That has one of the largest amounts. So
I am very much looking forward to the day that is removed from this sheet.
me too.
Something tells me you're gonna need it to pay the bills though, because we won't have property taxes. Yeah,
It'll come in handy. It'll come in handy.
yes.
Okay, I think that was the informational part, the
Yeah.
financial reports.
Couldn't wait.
Any other discussion on the financial reports? Okay, future agenda items. So for next meeting, then we've added the calendar. We'll have the minutes again from last time. But the main crux of the time will be what?
So I think we'll have EBF subcommittee report and discussion. We'll have probably at least some kind of an update in terms of what we're hearing from Cook County in terms of property taxes. And then obviously the calendar review will have the general welcome of our new member. Brian, is there anything October wise that lines up that I'm missing? I'm gonna pull up the last year's meeting.
We'll have our first levy conversation as well.
Yes.
and would we have any update on Act 3 timing
Well,
by then?
I don't know if we would have an update on Act 3 timing. I think that the CFC discussion about if the board wants CFC to have a conversation about potential funding, right, decisions and dates, that would affect the Act 3 process at this point. So right now, I mean, they're working on the design documents for that, you know. You don't have GMA and I have a team and they come back for teachers and people affected by that, but there really is a referendum timeline conversation that I think the board is going to want advice on or guidance from the CFC.
Yes.
So that probably should be a topic there. Don't pretend to speak for the board, but that's.
Yes, I think that's reasonable, yes.
So to prepare for that, I think it would be helpful for the CFC members to have a little bit more context around, you know, current the things that go into whether something would pass or not, right? So, you know, the current economy, right? Like a summary of the things that usually affect the way people vote, but that are specifically about the finances. So that we're like staying in our lane, but that we're taking into account those things. Because, you know, the board, you're gonna have different things that you're gonna think about, you know, when you decide either way. But I think for us, you know, I don't wanna just give my opinion on, but I'd like to have, like, look at all the options and then, you know, have discussion based on that.
Yeah, I've got a few ideas here that, on how we can bring that forward. You and I can talk offline and then, but I'm sure we can prepare something, pretty robust to drive that conversation.
Maybe what I'm thinking about piggybacks a little bit on what you're thinking, Tony, but given that we have a brand new member and we've got a couple members that weren't here for the Project 2 conversation, does it make sense to have a recap of the Project 2 process and the project itself, maybe even, and the different funding components? Then that to do different options that are potentially on the table for Act 3, that the board will ultimately be evaluating too.
What is the project called?
Good. We are, right now still sitting at over $1 million of unused contingency allowance. I know that, you know, planning to see that number start to get used up as we work, additional hours to get the building ready. But right now we're looking at, for the bulk of the building being taken over September 1st, and then, the pool commissioned and ready to be used October 1st, so.
For this year?
Yep.
All of that should be like the first thing you say here, makes people online happy, everything's fine. But what we're talking about now is referendum, debt certificates for CIP projects, and an increased tax levy. 3 things that you won't be able to make it to your car when you walk out there sometimes. So let's put the good stuff up front and make everybody happy and cheery. We'll do before you tell them the bad stuff, because the bad stuff is gonna be bad.
Okay, anything else on next steps?
This is on future agenda, and I'm just looking at the October meeting agenda from last year. So the only other thing that we haven't talked about that was on last year's agenda was the board goals. It looks like we did bring the board goals to share with the CFC.
That's really helpful, because that was wonderful as a new person, so whoever joins us, that's gonna be great.
Yes.
No, there we go, that was a job.
No problem. Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?